So what makes a good father is something for people more knowledgeable than I am to debate. But what makes a good father in a game is actually something I find a bit more quantifiable, though still with tons of criteria. 1. How much crap do they go through in order to protect their kid? Fathers are traditionally the provider and protector of the family, so if they can do that well, that earns some points in my book. 2. How good are they at raising, mentoring, and nurturing a child? Preparing a kid for the real world is very important. 3. How are they with kids in general, even one that isn't theirs? They don't have to officially adopt every kid they see, but being a father figure to someone still qualifies. 4. How much time do they spend with their charge? We don't stand deadbeats on this channel.
Goodness knows I'll need all the positive examples I can get.
Who wants some quality time with Daddy?
To start off this list, I'd like to offer the most helpful piece of advice I can give to someone who wants children of their own one day. There's no such thing as the perfect parent. Sometimes we get into bad situations and don't always handle them as well as we could have. But the important thing is that we try our best and keep our kids happy and healthy. Why do I bring this up? Well, let's talk about John Marston from the Red Dead Redemption series. Dear old Johnny boy. He became a member of the Vanderlinde gang and basically branded himself an outlaw. But hey, he made a family out of it. His wife Abigail and their son Jack. While we don't really see John being a fatherly figure, in fact he's mostly kind of cold and distant from Jack, part of it was because he didn't know if Jack was actually his biological son. Let's just say Abby was a busy lady and leave it at that. But mostly because he didn't think he could be a father. It wasn't that he didn't care for Jack, he obviously did. It's just he had no idea what he was doing. Can you blame him? Parenthood doesn't exactly come with an instruction manual.
So apparently, honey, you can't use diapers as a flotation device. Good to know.
But hey, when John couldn't be there, the rest of the game helped with raising Jack. That's kind of nice. But barely having an actual father around and being subjected to the extremes of being in a gang meant that Jack was robbed of a normal childhood. That's kind of a bum deal for the poor kid, so how did dear old dad make it on this list? Because dang it, he went through hell and high water to save his son. When Jack gets kidnapped the first time, John wastes no time going off to rescue him. Thankfully, the boy was safe. Actually, his kidnapper was suspiciously hospitable, but oofda, hearing your only child call the one who abducted him Papa Bronte, that's a new kind of ouch. Then, of course, several years later, John gets blackmailed into snuffing out the remaining members of his gang in exchange for his family's freedom. John doesn't even blink. He knows how this came to be and he knows what he did was wrong, but all he cares about is his family's safety. Everything he did was for his kid. And in the end, the only honorable thing left for him to do was to give himself up for the sake of his kin. The very definition of redemption. Unfortunately, I had to knock him down a few pegs because we don't get to see many father and son moments between Jack and John. Oh, there are a few scenes here or there, but not really enough to justify putting John any higher on the list. Plus, considering how turbulent his childhood was, you really gotta feel bad for Jack. But in a way, even he knew that John cared for him as any dad should. Why else would he take the time to avenge him later on? And the best part is Jack waited to execute his revenge. He took care of his mother until she passed away, then went after Ross. Seems dear old dad taught his boys something important after all. Prioritizing family. There are a lot of prominent father figures in Fire Emblem. Some are a little more unusual than others, but my personal pick leans more towards the traditional ones. You know, the metaphorical / literal skeleton mentors.
I'm gonna be useless soon!
Geralt is a mercenary who was once a knight in service to the Church of Seiros. He's the father of Byleth, whom he cared for by himself after his wife passed away during childbirth. The situation is a little more complicated than that, though. Okay, a lot more complicated. See, Geralt was once rescued by Rhea, who gave him part of her blood, which helped him live as long as he did. He's then married to Citri, one of the vessels Rhea created to host the Crests of Flames. Their marriage resulted in Byleth's birth being rather unusual since they don't emote all that much their whole life. Aware of the unusual circumstances, Geralt took Byleth away from the church and raised them on his own. You gotta give him credit. For a single father, he did a pretty swell job raising a child who doesn't talk or emote much. Byleth turned out to be a really competent mercenary under his wing. Even as they're enlisted as a professor, Geralt still looks out for them in his own way. It's really telling when Byleth did break out in tears when he's inevitably killed. Helps that unlike other plastic dead parent characters, we actually get to spend ample time with him beforehand. And to even add more to that, the two did have support conversations in Three Hopes, and it further cements how grateful Byleth is to him. Gerald's a good example of a devoted father in general. Sure, he wasn't very emotional or paranoid, but his dedication to looking after his child and aiding them when he needed to still shows. However, I do have to take some points off of him since a lot of the stuff about his fatherhood is relegated to backstory. He's also not presented as well as Grail or Mycen as far as father figures who train their child go. I know Three Houses is jam-packed with stories to focus on already, but it shouldn't hurt to let us see more of that menial chemistry between Gerald and Byleth. Small moments go a long way, after all. A lot of the best dads in gaming are those who fight tooth and nail for the sake of their kids. Usually these battles are harsh, grueling ones that put their lives on the line. But we shouldn't forget yet another sacrifice fathers make, one so vital and vicious it sends shivers down every parent's spine. Household chores! For those who may not know, Octodad Dadliest Catch is a game where you play as the father in a common suburban household. He does what you would expect from a suburban dad, taking care of the chores, buying the groceries, bringing his family on vacations, and all that stuff. His life seems pretty average, but something about him seems, off. He has trouble moving around from place to place, which makes even the smallest of tasks seem like an Olympic-level threat. People find him suspicious because of this, and he even had to try his best not to get caught for this behavior, for some reason. Heck, some of you even tried to kill him.
What is the deal with this neighborhood? Like, so what if he moves a little funny? That's really no reason to... Ow! What the... Oh, now I get it.
Okay. In all seriousness, having your household man be an octopus is a funny idea as it is. Struggling so much just to keep his identity in check adds even more to that. While we can laugh at it or throw our controllers in frustration with how hard it is to control the guy, you gotta admit, Octodad's still a really good father. It may have been just a front at first, but he does show genuine care for his family and goes through the blazes to save his children when they're in danger. Octodad may be significantly more lighthearted compared to every other candidate on the list, but the spirit and the effort are all there, and that's what really matters.
Though, let's not get into any questions of procreation. Some mysteries are just never meant to be solved.
Leaving a whole lot of questions that don't need to be answered.
You know, when it comes to being a dad, not everyone is born for it or even knows how to do it. We always assume that these fathers are deadbeats and the child would be better off not around them. And while this can be the case, even if a father doesn't know how to be one, what matters most is the attempt. Because as long as they spend time with their kids or care for them, said kid would respect them back. And if there's any character that will go to any length to protect their child, it's one whose wrath you never want to endure. Asura as a father is more the traditional stereotypical father you've seen in old times, but what it's supposed to be. The father works to support the family and the wife takes care of the household and children. The difference between a lot of families you see on Reddit or those weird texting videos that become more popular is that Asura genuinely cares for his family's well-being, despite having trouble showing it. He doesn't quite get emotional support and is almost scared by it. Whenever his daughter Mithra is crying, his only response is to beat up the thing that caused it.
You're a little confused, but he got the spirit.
He knows that doesn't always work, but as someone who was made to fight endlessly, it's all he knows. Thankfully, he has his wife to aid him in the facets of parenting he's not as good at. Ain't that nice? Two parents covering each other's blind spots. Too bad the other gods of the game kill his wife and kidnap their daughter to satisfy their own needs.
Suffering for your gods is your only purpose.
This leads Asura to go full Kratos and try to kill every god he can in order to protect Mithra. He knows his daughter is hurting and wants to protect her, so he uses that feeling to fuel his rage. His feeling of wrath is so vast that he becomes strong enough to destroy planets at the flick of a wrist. Doesn't matter if it's Wyzen, August, Deus, or Chakravartin, Asura will do what it takes, even dragging himself out of the underworld on multiple occasions to save her. And in the end, he makes the ultimate sacrifice. Despite knowing Chakravartin's existence is the only thing keeping him alive, he will still kill the creator of the world to free his daughter from the cruel entities that only seek to exploit her power. Asura might seem like a Kratos ripoff to some, but he did something that Kratos couldn't do until 2018. Be a caring father to his kid and risk everything to save them. And it was funny to see the reincarnated Asura in the true ending thinking he could take on a meteor when he saw it was causing his daughter distress. One Punch Man, you ain't. At least, not anymore. Dead Rising 2 takes a different approach to the series formula. While you're still slaughtering waves of zombies, there's a more human element at play. Our protagonist, Chuck Green, has a daughter, Katie. Before the game's events, she was bitten during an outbreak. To prevent her from turning into a zombie, she requires regular doses of Zombrex. Come the present day, an outbreak has hit Fortune City, but you don't just have to kill zombies and find survivors, you have to regularly give Katie her medicine.
Gee, having to risk life and limb to get incredibly expensive medicine for a loved one. I wonder what that's a metaphor for.
This is what really puts Chuck on the list. Being a dad is part of the gameplay. You have to make enough money to be able to regularly buy Zombrex for Katie. This adds an element of urgency to the game and really makes you feel for how hard Chuck works. The fact that her death in Off the Record drove him to madness really shows how important she is to him. In terms of his skill set, Chuck is basically MacGyver if he was in a zombie movie. He can turn common household objects into Geneva Convention violations far before Link's most recent outing.
Groovy.
To me, Chuck is easily the most relatable out of all the dads on this list. A bit of personal backstory, my younger brother has suffered from diabetes all his life, and like many Americans, affording insulin ain't easy. This is why I'm so glad to see an insulin company lose billions of dollars via a tweet.
Probably the only time Twitter was ever a force for good.
For as much as God of War's modern reboot has redefined Kratos as a character, it's important to acknowledge how far he's come. To make a long story short, Kratos is far from a nice person in the original games, let alone a good father. I mean, the guy was essentially mind-controlled into killing his own family, so that kind of massively screws someone up. After that, he has no qualms about murdering anyone who has the gall to stand in his general direction. But even then, Kratos wasn't this one-dimensional monster. He was a two-dimensional monster. In Chains of Olympus, he was given the opportunity to be with his daughter in Elysium, yet was forced to throw it away to stop Persephone. In doing so, he had to utterly destroy any love she had for him. As horrifying as it was all for the sake of protecting her. And then there's the stuff with Pandora in 3. He was willing to go through all kinds of hell for her sake, even if it was just so he could get the power to kill Zeus. He was even willing to end his own life to give hope back to humanity, though whether he actually cared about them or just wanted to spite Athena is debatable. So yeah, not entirely a sociopathic killing machine, but not exactly Father of the Year material. Then we get to the Norse era. From the moment the story begins, it's clear that Kratos is a vastly different person. He's more soft-spoken and patient, wise and experienced. But that doesn't mean he's a perfect father. He does treat his kid pretty roughly at points. Though, throughout all of it, you can absolutely tell he's doing it all for Atreus' sake. While he is harsh, in context, it's kind of a necessity to teach him how to survive in such a harsh and unforgiving world. You can easily tell that if Kratos felt he didn't have to do this, he wouldn't. As for the matter of keeping his godhood from Atreus, okay, let's cut Kratos a little bit of slack here. You gotta remember that most people wouldn't be too keen to tell people they were a mass murderer in a past life. While there's no denying what an a-hole Kratos was back in the Greek era, it's still incredible to see him come so far in both personal growth and fatherhood. Sometimes being a dad isn't just about the growth of the kid, it's about the growth of the parent too. For our next entry, we're going to cover a father who fought through powerful adversaries to save his daughter, going as far as to cheat death multiple times, and is made by Capcom.
Starting to think Capcom has a type.
As the protagonist of Resident Evil 7 and 8, Ethan Winters had fairly humble beginnings, being a system engineer married to his wife Mia. What he doesn't know, however, is that Mia is involved with some sketchy job involving babysitting a crazy bioweapon. Upon finding out she went missing, he went to find her, only to get involved with the bioweapon named Evelyn and her homely gang of redneck mutants. Fortunately, the whole shebang went well for Winters. Sort of. He comes home safely with his wife under the assurance of Chris Redfield. Little did he know his confrontation with Evelyn has since then caused him to mutate. Nevertheless, he's been able to lead a healthy life with his wife as they care for their newborn daughter Rose. The happy life didn't last, however, as he once again gets his family taken away from him under mysterious circumstances. Once again, Ethan goes through residence after residence, this time to save his daughter from the clutches of Miranda and the Four Houses. And yes, as the elephant in the room has been clarified, Ethan's journey is not far off from other Capcom fathers on this list. So what makes Ethan stand out more? Well, it's a combination of two things: story and gravity. Compared to Asura, Ethan does take care of his daughter more personally. Sure, he still didn't have a lot of time to spend with her, but we at least know he's a smart and savvy enough man to carry a family. Not to mention, look, baby, the weight of losing a family member so young would be catastrophic for any good father. Ethan proved that well. His immeasurable shock and disgust seeing Miranda treat her like an ingredient and Heisenberg compromising with him to use her as a weapon? No way in hell is he ever going to take any of that lightly. Ultimately, Ethan did give his life to destroy the Megamycete, given how the mutation is finally taking a toll on him. Years later, Rose grew up fine, sort of, though she never got to know him all that much or how much he went through for her sake. Well, that is, until we see what goes on in the Shadows of Rose DLC. Within the remnants of the Megamycete, Rose was trying to find a way to remove her mutation by rummaging through its memories. It's through this that she's able to see how much Ethan dedicated his life to her and how much he would still go through in order to protect her from all the dangers within the memories. In the end, she finally understands what her father went through and even kept her powers to stand by his convictions. As a character, Ethan may not be as cool or flashy as Capcom's other dedicated fathers, but the human element surrounding his story is indisputable. He's just an ordinary man trying to lead a normal life with his family, only for it all to be tragically robbed from him. But all his efforts, all his devotion to salvage what's left of him for his daughter's happiness, even fighting from beyond the grave for her, that is what makes him so awesome. In Persona 4, the protagonist is sent to live with his uncle Dojima. In addition to serving as the parental substitute to the protagonist, we also see his struggles with raising his own daughter, Nanako. Only for him to completely ruin everything when he takes the protagonist in for questioning and leaves Nanako at home to get kidnapped. When there's a suspect on the loose end, they just received a threatening letter.
Are you a pack of imbeciles?
But thankfully, it wasn't all for nothing, for it is only through the folly of Dojima that we could ever arrive at the greatness of Sojiro! When we first meet him, though, he's not exactly the most likable character. He's more than a bit callous to Joker, but it's not super difficult to see why he feels that way. Sojiro begrudgingly agreed to look after Joker when he was accused of assaulting a politician. Keep in mind, politicians are much more respected in Japan. Eventually, Sojiro starts warming up to Joker, letting him go out after dark and even teaching him coffee making. But where Sojiro really comes into his own is with his adopted daughter, Futaba. After the mysterious death of Wakaba, Sojiro became Futaba's caretaker. Being so traumatized by it, Futaba became a complete shut-in. But even then, he never tried to force her to do anything she was uncomfortable with. All the while, Sojiro was dealing with Futaba's abusive uncle trying to win custody. Yet even when you do get Futaba to go out into the world, her relationship with Sojiro doesn't magically improve. They go through struggles, yet it's made abundantly clear it's no one's fault, just two people going through life. And when Sojiro does learn that Joker and his friends are actually the Phantom Thieves, he keeps their secret and even becomes the unofficial dad of the group. And a list of fathers who are willing to go through hell and back starts to have someone a bit more down to earth. Plus, it's just refreshing to see such a positive portrayal of an adoptive father. Telltale Games' The Walking Dead, undeniably their biggest success in the industry. When the first season became a smash hit, you better believe they try to capture that magic again. And again. And again. And again. And they try to make all their games The Walking Dead. Really though, the series kind of peaked with the first season. It set the bar with its tone, the aesthetics on par with the original comics, and for being nowhere near as messy as the TV series.
Look at me dead in the eye and tell me I'm wrong. Can't do it, can ya?
Of course, a lot of that is thanks to the touching character arc between our two main characters, Lee Everett and Clementine. Lee was a history professor before the Walker outbreak who ended up on the wrong side of the law. But then the world went straight to hell, and while looking for help, he happens upon little Clementine all alone in her house. Her parents are out of town, and her babysitter's not in great shape. Quite dead, really. Realizing this little girl is all alone in a world torn apart by the undead, Lee decides to look after young Clementine for as long as he can. Clem still holds on to hope that she'll see her real parents again, but over time, Lee becomes the surrogate father she needed. He offers her comfort and protection. He teaches her how to survive in the new world. Everything he does is for her, and she's not even his kid. Bear in mind where Lee was before he met Clem. He did want a family of his own, but domestic struggles led him to killing a man and being shipped off to jail.
Oops.
He was remorseful for what he did and would give anything for a second chance. Suddenly, in comes this beacon of light, and suddenly, he has hope again. Sure, he didn't always make the right decision, but he's human. And as humans, we're allowed to make mistakes. Sometimes we do it on purpose just for the funnies. Regardless, Lee dedicated his life to a child he didn't even know. If he raised his own child like he raised a complete stranger, he would have been a great dad. I say could have in past tense because, well, you know what happens when we get too attached. The inevitable happens and Lee gets bitten. His time is running out, but he still uses whatever strength he has left to find Clementine. And then, as he lies dying, Lee has one more harsh lesson to teach his young charge: how to say goodbye.
You'll be okay.
The story between the two is nothing short of beautiful and tragic. And yet, their time together wasn't in vain, because not only does Clem survive, she thrives. She remains a constant force throughout the rest of the series, and even follows in Lee's footsteps at becoming a surrogate parent for another young child. Though Lee's time in the franchise was taken way too soon, his wisdom and paternal spirit lived on through the closest thing to a daughter he ever got. Undeniable proof that the first season of The Walking Dead was the series at its peak. Too bad the rest of the series couldn't reach that height. Neither could Telltale Games itself. But hey, they somehow overcame bankruptcy, which means... joy, another video that aged like sour milk. Gregory Edgeworth, ace attorney. His reputation lives up to Miles' stories of him. If only we get to see them both together more. Yuichiro Hikari, Battle Network. He isn't around as often as he should be, but when he is, he makes the most of it. Joel Miller, Last of Us. Okay, we'll be fair now. Everyone was an a-hole with the whole Fireflies thing. Bowser, Super Mario. He is the poster boy for parental control, but loses points for disowning the Koopalings. Booker, BioShock Infinite. A good escort mission where you have to rescue the lady you don't know is your lost daughter? Why are people so anal about this game again?
Jeez, who the heck is beating Lee and Sojiro? I mean, I know I wrote the list, but I still want to see. Yeah, that tracks.
Hey, Kiryu-chan! Who would have expected the patriarch of the Yakuza series to grace the top of this list? Well, if you're one of the people to play all of the Yakuza games, then you would know. For those who don't, let's dive in. Kazuma Kiryu may not look like the pinnacle of fatherhood that we're claiming him to be at first glance. But if Yakuza's Guide to Babysitting taught us anything, it's that looks can be deceiving. Ever since Yakuza 1, Kiryu got involved in raising the daughter of his childhood friend Haruka. And let me tell you, raising this kid ain't easy. Just in the first game, he defended her from another childhood friend, his former Yakuza family, a corrupt politician who was her biological father, and members of the Tojo clan and Omi Alliance, the two biggest Yakuza groups around. All because she was the key to 10 billion yen. That scratches the surface of what Kiryu does to protect Haruka. He's been shot multiple times, fought 2 tigers to rescue her, and went against the county's Yakuza and government to protect Haruka's son. Of course, none of this comes close to the most strenuous thing Kiryu had to do for Haruka. Do favors for her in order to gain her happiness. Okay, that was a joke, but anyone who has done the Haruka favors knows they are way too much effort for almost no good rewards. As of Yakuza 3, Kiryu took over the Sunshine Orphanage, where he grew up as its patriarch, raising a small group of children that all consider him their father figure. Multiple parts of Yakuza 3 and 4 show off Kiryu just trying to handle the kids' troubles and conflicts in a mature way using his knowledge. However, the greatest moments of Kiryu as a father come in Yakuza 6, and spoilers for it from here, okay? Throughout the game, Kiryu sees many types of father and son relationships. These go from biological to adoptive, fathers who put tradition over love, and those who don't love them until it's too late. Despite Kiryu spending time with Haruka and the other orphans, he regrets his relationship with the oldest son, Daigo Dojima. As Kiryu used to be the main enforcer of the Dojima family, he had a strong relationship with Daigo, showing even more of a developing relationship between the two Yakuza 2 forward. But as Kiryu wanted out of the life, he ran away from him and the Tojo clan as a whole. One of his regrets was forcing Daigo to become chairman and then leaving him to do so, escaping the Yakuza life and not spending any time with the last man he called his son. This is why Kiryu is number 1. Not only is he a father that will do anything to protect those he isn't even related to, he understands the pain and suffering required to be one. What he goes through and what he manages to accomplish rivals that of Lee, but can even surpass that as he also leaves behind those who will carry on his legacy. Even when he couldn't carry all of the burden and regret, he still moves forward. And if you threaten his family, he will make the entire country his enemy to protect them. And he will live through it every single time.
I'm Josh Scorcher, and happy Father's Day. By the time of this recording, the kids aren't here yet. But by the time you see this video, they'll be here. I can only hope I'll be half as good as the fathers on this list. Because I'm going to be fighting for my kids. Don't think that I won't.
Cut!
Hey everyone, this is Josh. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video around. Please check out my other social media like my Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr. Check out my other channels such as Joshua Burner for reactions and other stuff, Dragon Fighter Gaming for tabletop, and Bob Equestria for cartoons. Consider checking below the video and donating to my Patreon, Streamlabs for my merchandise, or becoming a YouTube member. Thanks for watching.